Episode 321. In the bedroom. Meanwhile, Jade thought it a little strange that David and Monica had rushed away, but since it was none of her business, she said nothing. The remaining guests chatted for more than an hour before the party broke up. At 10 o'clock, she started to wonder how they would return to the hotel now that David had left. "Gosh, it's late," said Sharon. "Jade, you might as well stay here tonight, and in the morning, Dario can take you back." "No, I can't stay here," she replied somewhat bashfully. But when Sharon and Dario insisted, she eventually relented. She had not expected to stay in Dario's house the first time she visited, nor had she expected his room to be so luxurious. As soon as she entered, she was struck by its luxury. The decor glittered, the design was exquisite, and every item was priceless. The whole room flaunted its owner's wealth. What surprised her the most was the enormous round bed in the center of the room that could probably allow at least 10 people to sleep. Her eyes widened in surprise. "So this is where you sleep? How can you manage in such a huge place?" She realized that he had been concealing his wealth from her, and compared to what he must have been used to, he had been roughing it all this time because of her. A trace of pity appeared in her eyes. Dario, of course, spotted the change in her look. He held her tightly in his arms as if nothing had happened. He nuzzled his head against her neck and said, "I knew you were coming, so I had the bed changed especially. Otherwise, how would it be good enough for us?" Jade had heard enough of this kind of talk and really didn't want to hear it anymore. She pouted and turned to break free from his embrace when he suddenly picked her up in his arms and laid her on the bed. "Dario, what do you want?" She lowered her eyes and removed her hand from his. Noticing her shyness, Dario felt his throat grow dry and his voice become much softer. He swallowed and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down, and then, in an exceptionally low and bewitching voice, he said, "I want to make love to you, of course." "Dario!" Shocked at his words, she twisted her body away. She had not expected that when she moved a little, she could clearly feel a familiar heat burning in her most sensitive place. "Don't go," he growled impatiently. Had there not been so many people around them downstairs, he would have kissed her already. Every second he spent with her was precious. Jade lowered her head shyly and said in embarrassment, Dario, didn't I tell you? I'm on my period. 2 more days." He held tightly onto her waist and gave her his most charming smile. He then whispered into her ear, "Do you really want to be bullied by me like this? I just want to kiss you. Don't you want me to be with you? Aren't you going crazy from thinking about me?" She blushed at his straightforward words and glared at him fiercely. Just as she was about to push him away, his kiss was already on her tender lips. "He's really too much," she thought impatiently. "How can I be this kind of person? It's clearly him who wants it." She meant to reject his kiss, but the touch of his lips against hers made her entire body melt. She didn't even have the strength to push him away. In the end, she could only lie back down on the bed and allow his kiss to consume her remaining consciousness. His kiss became more and more intense as his body pressed fiercely against hers. It was as if he wanted to absorb her entire body into his own embrace, and Jade responded fervently. The two of them were locked in such a passionate kiss that Jade could hardly breathe. Soon they were burning with desire and unable to hold back any longer. Jade wanted to tell him that her period was almost finished, but just as she opened her mouth, the landline in Dario's room began to ring. She came back to her senses and looked at the old-fashioned phone. It was like an ornamental antique. She was surprised that it worked. Dario ignored it and reached his hand inside Jade's clothes, but she pushed him away. "Dario, someone's calling you." "It's okay, don't worry about it." He continued to embrace her, kissing her passionately, but the ringing didn't stop. It seemed apparent that the caller would not give up till someone answered. Dario's eyes turned cold. He had never thought that he would be disturbed in his own room. Who dared to interrupt him? After the phone had been ringing for 2 whole minutes, they were no longer in the mood to kiss. "Dario, why don't you answer?" she asked tentatively. "Maybe it's something urgent." By now, Dario's handsome face had completely darkened. He was angry, and he wanted to throw the phone out of the window. But at Jade's urging, he obediently answered. Before he could utter a word, his grandmother spoke. "Dario, ask Miss Winslet to come to my room. I want to speak with her." Sitting beside Dario, Jade could overhear the call. Hearing that his grandmother was looking for her, she became flustered. She didn't know why she wanted to talk to her, but she quickly got up and tidied her hair and clothes. Dario looked at her and asked, "What are you doing?" Episode 322. Grilled by Granny. "I'm straightening my clothes," Jade replied seriously. "Didn't your grandmother want to see me? I'll go over now. Tell me which room she's in." Dario felt pained at her naivety. so he put the phone down and kissed her. He was reluctant to let her leave. "You stay here. I'll go and explain it to Grandma." "Your grandma said she wanted to see me, not you. I know you have issues with her. If I don't go, then won't the conflict just get worse? For our future, I must go. I'm afraid you won't be happy after listening to what she has to say." He smoothed the hair on his forehead. His eyes were full of love. His grandmother was indeed troubled. While he himself was able to ignore anyone's opinions, Jade could not. She had already regarded his family as her family. Her body, though, slight in frame, was emitting determination from every pore. She clenched her fists and smiled brightly. "Don't worry, Dario. I'll try my best to make your grandmother like me. I don't care what she says. As long as I can be by your side, I can put up with anything." "You'll make me feel guilty if you do this. I'm so lucky to have a wife like you." He knew she was actually afraid, but her insistence on going touched him deeply. He felt that the best thing he could have ever done was to marry her. "Let's go. I'll go with you." He gripped her hand firmly, demonstrating his support. His grandmother was staying in a room on the 3rd floor, where it was relatively quiet. When she saw them enter, she glanced at the way they were holding hands and frowned. Though she had changed into her nightdress, she still looked very elegant. Sitting on the sofa, she commanded, "Dario, go back to your room. I want to talk to Miss Winslet alone." Dario did not move. He didn't want to leave. This embarrassed Isabel. Jade was afraid that his grandmother would be so angry, so she nudged him and whispered, "You can go. I'll talk to her by myself. You'll disturb us if you stay here." He pursed his lips and looked at Isabel through narrowed eyes. His tone was respectful but also forceful. "Grandma, I hope you understand one thing. Jade is the woman I love. I will not allow her to be harmed even in the slightest, whether you agree or not. She's the one I'm going to marry." After saying this, he even kissed her in front of his grandmother and left the room. When Isabel saw her grandson speaking to her so rudely, her expression turned ugly. Then she politely said to Jade, "Have a seat, Miss Winslet." "I'll stand, thank you." Isabel did not insist, but just settled into a more comfortable position on the sofa. "Miss Winslet, I think you know who you are. You're an orphan. You have no parents. You're not a young lady from a good family. You may have some fame, but you're just an actress. Do you seriously think you're worthy of our Dario?" Jade could clearly see the contempt in her eyes and knew why she looked at her like this. Indeed, what she had said was the truth, but she no longer felt inferior because she knew that Dario loved her and she was also prepared to fight for him. Although she had already guessed what his grandmother would say to her, the bluntness of her words still stung. She blinked away the sadness from her eyes and looked dispassionately at the older woman. "I understand what you're saying, but I think that my being with him has nothing to do with my family background. Do you know that marrying him puts us in the same family?" Isabel had grown up in a rich and powerful household, so she knew what she was talking about. "I know it's very important to be a proper family," Jade replied. "But I think that sometimes one can't measure the love between two people by just considering their background. Do you think it's more important to have a well-matched family than a happy family? Do you want Dario to marry a woman he doesn't love? Do you think he'd be happy?" Jade chose her words with care, neither servile nor overbearing, but respectful and heartfelt. Isabel was instantly enraged. She glared fiercely at the unreasonable-sounding young woman and said bluntly, "Miss Winslet, do you know what love is? Forgive me for being blunt, but I can find a dozen women more beautiful than you and more worthy of Dario. Society women." Jade knew this. Of course, she also believed that she had talent, but she also knew that there were countless people who wanted to marry Dario. However, since Dario had chosen her, she would not give up. "I believe you can find a better woman than me," she replied sincerely. "I also know I'm not good enough to be a perfect wife, but I'm working at it, trying to be a wife worthy of him. I love him with all my heart, and no matter what you say, I'll always do my best to make you like me." Her eyes flashed with determination. Her words surprised Isabel. She straightened her spine and stared at Jade with contempt. "Tell me, how much do you want? Is 10 million enough? You people just want money, I know. In the entertainment industry, there are many people who become celebrities because they want to marry into wealthy families. Isn't that what you want? I'll give you enough money to get whatever you want." Isabel was sure that Jade wanted Dario for his money. She'd seen too many women like this. She didn't expect to be mistaken. "You misunderstand me," Jade replied with a hint of anger. "I like Dario, not his money. Even if he were penniless, I'd still want to be with him. You may not like me, but please do not insult me. She bit her lower lip and clenched her fists. Episode 323. Where's Evelyn? Jade had not expected Dario's grandmother to think she was the kind of woman who could be bought. When Isabel saw that Jade had rejected her offer, she thought she was doing it to get more. She glanced at her with disdain and said sarcastically, "You want me to like you? Let me tell you something. It's impossible for someone of your status to enter the foster family. You think I like a woman who sleeps with a man before she gets married? You're an actress. I imagine you're used to criticism, but our Dario is different. He's been outstanding since he was young. I don't want shame to fall on him because of a woman." Hearing this, Jade remembered that no one knew that they were already married. According to Isabel, if a woman slept with another man before they got married, even if they were engaged, she would be considered a hussy. "I understand what you mean. Thank you for your reminder." She smiled politely. Isabel had not expected Jade to have such a good attitude. In fact, it could be considered obliging. She was also quite gentle looking and cute. It was just that the disparity in their backgrounds was too great. "Miss Winslet, I think you understand what I mean. Think it over and come and talk to me when you're ready. You'll definitely be satisfied with the amount." Jade's expression was neither servile nor arrogant. She had a faint smile on her face as she bowed her head and said indifferently, "Don't worry, that day will never come. It's getting very late now. I should go to bed." After saying this, she stood there and waited. Only when Isabel dismissed her with a gesture did she leave very politely, closing the door gently behind her. She thought that Dario would have already returned to his room, but as soon as she closed the door, she fell into his warm embrace. Her heart swelled with love when she realized that he'd been waiting outside the whole time. The edges of her mouth turned up in a faint smile as she relaxed in his arms. Then she raised her head to look at him and said, "Right, Dario, I have something to tell you. Tonight we must—" She'd wanted to say that they should sleep in separate rooms that night, but Dario interrupted her. "I've arranged another room for you. You can sleep there tonight." Her heart skipped a beat. How did he know what I wanted to say? It's miraculous. Did he overhear our conversation? She wondered. Dario read her thoughts and said simply, "The room's well soundproofed. I didn't hear your conversation. Don't think too much. Let's go." He then took her to the guest room closest to his own room. A couple of maids were cleaning and tidying it, changing the bed covers to the light green colour that Jade liked the most. Dario had also asked them to light some relaxing incense. When Jade saw the room, she turned to him and asked, "How did you know I wanted to sleep in a separate room?" There was an unfathomable smile on his face. He didn't answer but touched her soft hair and said dotingly, "I'm afraid I'll have to make things difficult for you tonight." "How can it be difficult?" she asked, looking around. "This is the best room I've ever slept in." She had not expected that their guest rooms would be so big and luxurious, with priceless oil paintings on the walls. However, she was still disappointed that she couldn't sleep with him. "If you're afraid you might feel lonely tonight, I can sneak over to keep you company. No one will know," he whispered. Then he wrapped his arms around her slim waist. The maids saw this and immediately packed up their cleaning things and tactfully left. Just as Dario was thinking they could maybe have a good time before he returned to his room, his phone rang again. Jade smiled awkwardly. "We're destined not to be intimate tonight," she thought. "Maybe we're cursed." He wanted to ignore it, but it kept ringing. Jade was afraid it might be important and nudged him. When he took out his phone and saw it was Monica, he frowned. He thought for a long time before answering. "What is it?" he asked coldly. "Dario, bad news. I don't know where Evelyn is. You've got to find her." "When did she disappear?" he asked faintly with a dark look in his eyes. "I don't know. When I got to the hospital, she wasn't in her room. Don't ask so many questions. Just come quickly." "It's impossible. There are so many nurses, doctors, and family members with her. How could she just disappear?" he asked carelessly. He had no intention of looking for her. His attitude angered Monica. "Dario, don't talk nonsense. It was because of you that she tried to kill herself, and now she's missing. Do you think she knew you were going to take Jade to meet your parents today? If you don't have an ounce of conscience, then come out and help me look for her," she sighed. "If you don't come, I won't force you, but I really didn't expect you to be so heartless." Monica angrily hung up, and only then did she realize that tears were rolling down her cheeks. She knew he would have come in the past, but now his heart belonged to Jade. Meanwhile, there was a knock on the guest room door, and Sharon called out, "Dario, are you in there? Come out. I have something to tell you." Jade looked at Dario's serious expression. She was worried that something serious must have happened, especially now that his mother was looking for him. "Dario, what is it? Who called?" she asked. It's okay, go take a shower and rest. His eyes softened. He kissed her on the forehead and went to open the door. Episode 324, Time to Sleep. The moment Dario opened the door, he spotted the phone in Sharon's hand and immediately understood why she had come to find him. He didn't want Jade to hear the conversation, so he moved away from the door. Jade started to worry. What's happened? She wondered. Why did Dario look so serious after answering the phone, and why did his mother come to find him? Is it just a coincidence? Dario, Evelyn's in trouble, said Sharon nervously. I just received a call from her mother. Dario remained calm. I know, I'll go out once Jade's asleep. What did you say? Why are you waiting for her to fall asleep? The Harpers are desperate. She was surprised that he seemed so indifferent even when it appeared he already knew the situation. He was too calm. After speaking with her, Dario returned to the guest room, surprising Jade, who had undressed and was about to take a bath. She immediately hid her naked body under the covers and blushed. Dario, I thought you were going out. Why did you come back so quickly? Do you want to take a bath? I'll fill the tub for you. Hang on a minute. He went into the bathroom, ran a hot bath, and added some essential oils that smelled of lemongrass, which was her favorite scent. When the bath was ready, he returned to the bed, lifted Jade out, and gently placed her in the bathtub. What are you doing here? She shyly sank under the bubbles and looked at him curiously. If his grandmother found out they were together like this, she would be furious and accuse her of being a wanton woman. I'll go out once you're asleep, he said gently. If you need to do something, just leave. Don't worry about me. However, Dario insisted on waiting till she fell asleep. He knew it was hard for her to film every day. If he couldn't even help her get a good night's rest, then what right did he have to call himself her husband? Because she was afraid of delaying him, Jade only soaked for a few minutes before getting out of the bath. When she was ready, he carefully put a bathrobe around her and carried her back to bed. Jade felt she was being spoiled like a little princess. The way he doted on her was so sweet. Lying in bed next to her with the lights off, he gently patted her back as if she were a child and slowly coaxed her to sleep. He was just short of singing a lullaby. Dario, how did you know I wanted to sleep in a separate room today? She murmured. Do you have a sixth sense? Did you guess what your grandma was saying? She leaned against his chest. Don't ask so many questions. Just relax and go to sleep. Dario kissed her on the forehead while he continued to rub her back with gentle movements, which made her feel drowsy. In fact, he'd already arranged the guest room for her, not because of his grandmother, but because there were dozens of people in the foster villa between the family members, drivers, maids, and other staff. He could not guarantee that everyone was loyal. Given Jade's high profile, he didn't want to risk any hint of a scandal for her. If the press found out she had a secret lover, the scandal could damage her career. It had been tough for her to get to where she was, and tarnishing her reputation with gossip would be tragic. He didn't want her to be heard, not even on an internet forum. In next to no time, Jade was breathing evenly in his embrace. Dario sighed and kissed her cheeks. I'm sorry, Jade. He knew that his grandmother looked down on her. As she'd grown up in a high society family and in another era, her arrogance was in her very bones. When she'd asked Jade to come to her room, she must have said some very unpleasant things to her. Yet Jade had told him nothing. She had kept smiling and even told him that she had to work hard to make her grandmother like her. She was so positive that it made his heart ache and deepened his love for her. He would have already told his grandmother that they were married, had it not been for Jade's concern that his family would be angry. So she was suffering now, and he resolved to treat her better to make it up to her. Jade had had a long day, and with Dario's help, in less than half an hour, she'd fallen into a deep sleep. He kissed her on the lips, carefully covered her with the quilt, and reluctantly tiptoed out. The first thing Dario did was to ask David to check all the surveillance cameras in the hospital where Evelyn was being treated. Evelyn was Monica's younger sister, and since David had a crush on her, he thought that he would take the matter very seriously. After that, he called Lucas and asked him to immediately send people to search for Evelyn near the hospital. After dealing with those matters, he went downstairs. His parents were waiting for him, anxiety writ large on their faces. His mother frowned. Why are you taking so long? The Harpers are going crazy from worry. I was just getting Jade to sleep, he replied calmly. Sharon almost flew into a rage at these words. Jade's not a child anymore. Why does she need you to sing her lullabies, especially with what's going on? I know you don't like Evelyn, even if it's over between you two. You two were together for more than 20 years. Doesn't it hurt you to see her in trouble? Episode 325, The Beach. Listening to Sharon's endless scolding, Dario maintained a poker face. He said seriously, Nothing is more important than Jade getting her sleep. This would have started Sharon off again, but fortunately Donald caught her arm and hushed her. All right, she said. Your girlfriend is the most important, but now that she's sleeping, will you go and find Evelyn? You know she's the apple of her family's eye. They're already not happy with us, and now she's gone. I want you to find her as soon as possible. I know you can't force feelings, and I won't force the two of you to be together. But she attempted suicide because of you. The more Sharon spoke, the more emotional she became until she could no longer hold back her tears. Okay, sweetheart, Donald said comfortingly. Try and calm down before you give yourself an ulcer. Don't say any more. Dario understands. That is your son. Don't you know he'll always do the right thing? Let's go. Let's go and start looking. Sharon nodded. Finding Evelyn was paramount. She asked the driver to bring the car around and went to wait outside. Donald patted Dario's shoulder and said in a deep voice, Don't blame your mother. She cares about Evelyn. Your mum's very anxious because she's gone missing. Let's go and find her. He caught up with Sharon and left the house. Dario narrowed his eyes. There was an indescribable emotion on his face. He stared in the direction of the guest room for a while before turning and leaving. He rushed to the hospital where Evelyn had been. David was already in the hospital's monitoring room, filtering out the surveillance videos of the corridors near her room. Have you found anything? Dario asked. No, I've gone through all the videos and there's no trace of her, David replied. This was a private hospital and it had a range of surveillance, but there was no sign of Evelyn either near her room or at the entrance. It's unbelievable. Can people disappear into thin air? David wondered. In order to protect the patient's privacy, there were no cameras in the rooms, so they couldn't see what happened just before Evelyn disappeared. Because David hadn't found footage of Evelyn going out, he thought she must still be in the hospital and had been searching for her whereabouts on all the live camera feeds. Dario looked at the surveillance again carefully and finally found some clues. Evelyn had managed to slip out by changing into a nurse's uniform. He saw that 3 hours earlier, a nurse had come out of her room with a tray in her hands. She had kept her head lowered, as if she were afraid of being recognized. David went to check and found out that a nurse was scheduled to do a medicine round at that time. However, the two nurses have already come out. David found the nurse and interrogated her, discovering that Evelyn had given her money to get her a nurse's uniform. She had then told her mother she wanted some privacy to eat her food. Since she'd hardly been eating, her mum was naturally very happy. Evelyn had taken advantage of her solitude to change into the nurse's uniform and quietly slip out. By following her journey through various surveillance cameras in the neighborhood of the hospital and beyond, they had finally figured out where she had gone. She had taken a taxi to Coney Island. Lucas traced her whereabouts and sent it through an accurate GPS location. Dario looked at the time. It was almost midnight. He was afraid that Jade would wake up and look for him, so he wanted to go back to the house. Since he had located Evelyn, he could just send someone else to pick her up. He weighed the pros and cons. His family and the Harpers went back a long way, and she was like a cousin to him. He decided to go to the beach personally. The beach at Coney Island was a famous scenic spot. The promenade was lined with arcades and fairground rides, all closed for the nights. The area was deserted. As David and Dario drove slowly along the shorefront, they spotted a woman with disheveled hair and white clothes standing on the sand. Drifting to them in the night air came the sound of heart-wrenching crying. David stopped the car and pointed the headlights at her. His hands were sweaty on the wheel. Could this be a ghost? He thought. Dario's usual cold expression relaxed a little. He got out of the car without saying a word and walked toward the woman. David quickly followed him down the beach, thinking, could that person be Evelyn? As he came closer, he saw that it was. Evelyn was standing in the sea, the water surging around her knees. Her throat was hoarse from crying. Sensing someone behind her, she turned stiffly and saw Dario. Her face, so filled with despair, instantly brightened. Darling, Dario, you're here for me. Evelyn moved to hug him, but she clearly felt Dario's rejection. His expression was the one she was most familiar with. So cold, so charming, yet so cold. She took another step back into the sea and burst into tears. He was no longer her darling Dario. He had fallen in love with another woman. He did not like her. Seeing Evelyn retreating into deeper water, David panicked. This is Monica's sister, he thought. Monica specifically instructed me to ensure her safety. If something happens to her, I won't be able to bear the consequences. When the seawater reached Evelyn's thighs, he broke out in a sweat. He was afraid that she would lose her mind and continue to walk out to sea. That would be terrible. Evelyn, calm down. Come out now. It's so cold in there. David said as he walked into the water. However, when he took a step closer, Evelyn took a step back. "Don't come near me! Go away! Go away!" Evelyn was getting more and more frantic, and she kept backing away. Episode 326. Only Friends. The waves kept rolling toward them. David could feel a rip current pulling at his legs and worried that one large swell could sweep them all away. "Please, Evelyn, come back to the beach. Your sister and your parents are worried about you. Please, stop before something terrible happens." But she kept walking away from David, and he didn't dare go any further. Evelyn looked as if she was not afraid of death. Her thoughts were spiraling out of control. "So what if something happens? No one will care," she cried out. "He won't even look at me. Even if I die, he won't look at me. No one will care. So why am I still alive? I might as well die." Evelyn stared at Dario's cold face. Her feet kept moving away from the shore, almost beyond her control. The waves pulling at her were cold, and she couldn't stop trembling. "Don't think about Dario," David shouted to her over the sound of the crashing waves. "Isn't he just a man? What's the big deal? You're beautiful and smart. Are you afraid that you won't find love? I know how that feels. Your sister has never looked twice at me, and that hurts, but I'm still alive. And well, if what you said is true, I'm the one who should be trying to drown myself. I've loved your sister for 20 years. David's voice was choked with tears. "But I only like Dario. I don't want other men," Evelyn cried. "Evelyn, it's about love. Sometimes, when we see the happiness of the people we love, doesn't that also make us happy? Now everyone in your family is looking for you. Think about your mother. It's not been easy for her to raise you by herself. Now that you finally have such a happy family, are you willing to leave?" David tried hard to persuade her, but it only seemed to provoke her. She was getting more and more distraught. "I'm not a real part of the Harper family. No matter how good they are to me, I'd still be miserable. Mum, I've let her down so much. It would be easier for her if I was dead." Evelyn's pale face was full of anguish. The seawater reached her waist. David saw that she was unmoved by this soft approach, so he tried being hard on her. "Evelyn, don't talk nonsense. You're so selfish. You just want everyone to be sad for you. Dream on. Hurry up and come back here. Do you know that your family has gone crazy looking for you? And Dario's family too? They've been awake all night. Do you think we have nothing better to do?" David cursed and then walked back to join Dario on the shore. "Dario, say something. If anything happens to Evelyn, both of your families will be dragged in. I don't want to see your families turn against each other." Evelyn couldn't bear to part with her mother, but she really didn't want to live anymore. She clenched her fist tightly, and then her gaze fell on Dario, who hadn't said a word. "Darling Dario, if you'll only say you love me, I'll come out of the water." Evelyn looked at him with her last hope. What she received was still indifference. "Evelyn, I've already told you very clearly that I will never love you. You can only be my friend," Dario said coldly. David broke out in a cold sweat. Couldn't Dario say something nice first and coax her to come out? He thought. But he knew that Dario had his reasons. If he lied to her, Evelyn would only do something similar in the future. Therefore, the best way to put an end to this was to make the situation clear to her. Not far from where they stood, more than a dozen luxury cars were speeding toward them. "No, I don't believe it. You must hold a place for me in your heart. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here." Evelyn screamed at the top of her lungs. She covered her ears as if she didn't want to hear anything Dario said. She didn't want to believe that it was true. "If you weren't my cousin, I wouldn't be here." Dario narrowed his dark eyes, which held a trace of emotion. Evelyn felt like there was a knife through her heart. So he meant that he was there only because of their families, not because he liked her. He'd never felt love for her. Her heart broke into pieces. She wept even louder. "Why, Dario, I've liked you for so long, but you've never looked at me with love. Not even one look. Please tell me you love me, that you're worried about me. Please tell me that's why you came to me, even if it's a lie. Why are you not willing to lie for me? As long as you say you're worried about me, I'll come out immediately." Evelyn's heart was in a knot. "I don't want to lie to you," Dario said expressionlessly. She wasn't worth it. Evelyn let out a mirthless laugh. "Dario, you're heartless. Monica's right. You're the most heartless, callous, and indifferent person in the world. Why did you trample on my heart? Even if I die, you won't be sad, will you?" She began to laugh hysterically. "No," Dario said coldly. Her laughter finally stopped. What replaced her were endless cries of despair. Evelyn took another step back and allowed the seawater to pull at her blouse. "Dario, don't you have a conscience? Do you want to kill Evelyn?" Sharon, who had just arrived, rushed up and roared at her son. She looked at Evelyn with a worried frown and hurriedly advised, "Evelyn, be sensible now. We have something to talk about. Dario was being unkind. I will definitely help you teach him a lesson, but you mustn't do anything stupid. You're still so young." Looking at the heartless Dario, Evelyn felt her heart break all over again. "I just want the person I like to like me. Why is it so difficult?" she thought in anguish. As she stood there, one step away from being swept into the uncaring sea, Evelyn's mother Pam came rushing across the sand. Seeing her daughter's plight, she was so frightened that her heart almost beat right out of her chest. Episode 327, The Rescue. Pam stood by the beach and cried out emotionally to her daughter. "Please come back to me. You are my dearest, my youngest child. How can you think of leaving your mother like this? Whatever's wrong, I'll help you." She had watched helplessly as her daughter had become like this and had shared her pain. She had long felt that Evelyn was depressed, but she had never really thought that she would do such foolish things. Evelyn had lacked a father figure during her childhood. She had never felt safe until Pam had married Rex Harper. But then Evelyn had met Dario. It was only then that she had come out of her shell and had stopped being such an introvert. But Pam had never thought that she would fall in love with him and end up like this. "Mum, I can't bear to part from you, but I really don't want to live anymore. My heart hurts, Mum. Do you know what I mean?" Evelyn burst into a fresh wave of tears. "Evelyn, come here," Rex called, his eyes full of worry and anger. As her stepfather, he had treated her with a lot of affection. Couldn't she think about her family? "Come out quickly," he demanded. "Have you thought about your mother's feelings? Do you know how worried she is? She can't eat or sleep worrying about you. If you leave just like this, what will it do to her?" Evelyn still didn't move, and Rex almost rushed forward, but he was afraid that Evelyn would do something stupid. As more cars arrived, the beach was filling up with people who had come to help find Evelyn. Dario's sister Diane said, "Evelyn, calm down a little. Look at me. I'm already in my 30s and I'm still single. But aren't I still living well? Come out. I'll introduce you to a man better than Dario. You're outstanding. There must be a lot of men who like you." "No, no one will like me anymore. All of you go away, go away." Evelyn saw them surrounding her with their voices, crowding her, threatening. She stepped back and her foot slipped on a rock. She disappeared under the water. Everyone's heart missed a beat. Pam even let out a violent scream. "Ah, my Evelyn, what were you thinking? What can I do?" It was high tide, and the waves were fierce. If someone didn't swim out to save her, she might die in the sea. While the crowd on the beach descended into anxious confusion, Dario calmly told Lucas to go and save her. When Lucas was in the Special Forces, he had often trained in rough seas like this, so saving Evelyn would be an easy task for him. He dived straight into the frothing waves, and within moments came up with Evelyn in his arms and carried her to the beach. Evelyn coughed violently and spat out seawater. She was a little weak, but otherwise unharmed. Her mother, Pam, had fainted from the fright, but she slowly rallied after Lucas's rescue. The first thing she did when she recovered consciousness was to confirm her daughter's health. Seeing that she was safe and sound, she finally let out a sigh of relief. Mother and daughter hugged each other and cried. "Promise me you'll never do something that stupid again. You scared me to death," Pam said, holding on to her tightly. Her daughter's body was as cold as ice, and Pam's heart ached. Lucas took off his coat and wrapped it around Evelyn. Evelyn only shifted her weak gaze to Dario. Her eyes were empty and unfocused. No one knew what she was thinking. Her tears had all dried up. "Dario! Dario!" Evelyn cried hoarsely. Her eyes were constantly searching for him. Sharon pushed her son toward him, and Evelyn used her last bit of strength to throw herself into his arms. It was as if his embrace was the best place in the world. Unexpectedly, Dario only frowned and didn't push her away. Pam pleaded with him. "Dario, I beg of you. Evelyn can't manage without you. She likes you so much. Can't you just try to accept her? Just give it a try." She didn't care that she was begging. All she wanted was to make her daughter happy because her daughter was her only hope in the world. Dario pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Then, in front of everyone, he carried Evelyn to his car. Surprise flashed in Lucas and David's eyes. They didn't expect him to make such a move. They soon caught up to him, and Lucas got into the driver's seat. Dario placed Evelyn in the back seat and sat down beside her, but he didn't hold her anymore. Evelyn felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Her tired eyes stared intently at him, deeply afraid that she would miss a single detail. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to hug her. She felt so happy. His embrace had been so warm. She wished that she could live in his arms for the rest of her life. "Where to, Dario? The hospital?" Lucas inserted the key and asked calmly. Dario was about to confirm that when Evelyn pulled his sleeve and said nervously, "Dario, I don't want to go back to the hospital. It's cold there and there is no you. I want to go home. Please, can you take me home?" Evelyn wanted to hug him, but was afraid that he would reject her. However, just pulling his sleeve made her very happy. Dario looked at her and nodded at Lucas. "Go to the Harper house." Evelyn put one hand over her heart and pinched her thigh. She couldn't believe the way that he was looking her at that moment. His eyes were much gentler than before. Could I be dreaming? She thought. David's expression was solemn and he didn't say anything, but his eyes showed his surprise. Dario is usually so cold to her, he thought. Why is he treating her so well now? Could it be that he's really moved by Evelyn? Or is he afraid that she'll do something stupid again? He didn't dare ask. Episode 328. Until next time. "You're so good to me, Dario," Evelyn said as she tugged on his sleeves, overcome with emotion. She looked at his handsome face and her heart was instantly filled with warmth. But just when she thought that she still had some hope, Dario completely shattered her heart. "Don't let this happen again. Do you understand?" he said coldly, staring into her misty eyes. His cold, harsh words were deliberately alienating. He put on a poker face, pursed his thin lips, and refused to say anything more. Evelyn felt even colder than when she'd been standing in the sea. She hugged herself, trying to warm herself up, but it was useless. Faced with Dario's coldness and the way he'd just spoken, she actually felt a trace of fear. She slowly let go of his sleeve and felt a stabbing pain in her heart. "I was mistaken. He hasn't changed. He's still the man who will never fall in love with me. He's still the same cold and arrogant tycoon," she thought. She sucked in a breath of air and closed her eyes tightly. She didn't want to see Dario in this way. She would rather stay in the moment when he had carried her up the beach. When they arrived at her family home, David carried Evelyn to her room. Evelyn's parents and Dario's arrived soon after. Their family's private doctor also rushed over as soon as possible. After examining Evelyn, he told them that there were no major problems. It was just that her body was overstretched and she needed a good rest. Pam, who was also very tired, finally let out a sigh of relief. What she had feared the most was that her daughter would suffer long-term complications. Evelyn had changed out of her wet clothes and gotten into bed. Her eyes were empty as she stared at the ceiling. They were bloodshot, but there was not a trace of sleepiness in them. Sharon came into her room and said gently, "Evelyn, you should take the chance to rest. Don't think about it anymore. It's good that you're fine. You can't imagine how frightened your mother was." Evelyn looked away. She felt a stirring of guilt. It was almost dawn. Just like David had said, so many people were tormented because of her. "You should go back downstairs. I'm fine. Sorry I was so willful," she said remorsefully. "It's good that you're fine, but next time don't scare us like that." Sharon's heart ached as she went up and patted her head. As a child, Evelyn had been so sweet and gentle. She couldn't believe that her behaviour would ever be so extreme. It seemed that Jade's visit to the foster family had dealt her a huge blow. The rest of the two families came in to say goodnight. Evelyn turned to Dario, who had not spoken to her since they had arrived home. She bit her lower lip tightly and grasped the sheet in her hand. Then she gathered her courage and whispered, "Dario, can you stay with me? I'll be fine in a while." The atmosphere in the room became tense. Everyone held their breath and turned their eyes to Dario. Just when they thought that he would resolutely refuse, he nodded. Everyone was stunned, but they didn't say anything and left Evelyn's room as if nothing had happened. When Evelyn saw him nod, she was so excited that she shed tears. She really hadn't expected him to agree. Her eyes were wide with joy. She wanted to cherish every moment of being with him. There were only the two of them left in the room. Evelyn leaned against the headboard and stared intently at Dario, who was sitting in a chair at her bedside. It was good just to watch him. Dario's expression was serious. From time to time, he took out his phone to check it. It seemed like he was waiting for something important, but she didn't care. As long as he was there, it would be fine. "Dario, it's so kind of you to stay with me," she said. "There won't be a next time." Dario raised his dark eyes to meet hers. They were as unfathomable as the bottom of a lake. You could never know what he was thinking. Evelyn felt a stabbing pain in her chest and couldn't hold back the tears. "Do you mean that you won't come and see me again?" she asked. This was not the result she wanted. "I don't have the energy to care about someone who will only hurt me and ignore the feelings of my family." Dario's cold words contained no trace of emotion. Evelyn felt anxious. She sat up quickly. "Dario, I know I was wrong. I'll never do anything stupid again. Really, I promise. Please don't do this." She became more and more agitated. She was afraid that she would never see him again. If I can't see him, what will I do? Here's my life, she thought. There was a knock on the door and Pam came in with a bowl of chicken soup and a gentle smile on her face. Dario, it's already so late. Are you hungry? Monica just made some supper. You should eat some too, she said. Monica appeared behind Pam. An inexplicable emotion flashed across her eyes as she held out the bowl of soup to Dario. Mum, what are you talking about? She said with a smile. Didn't you specially make the chicken soup for Dario? Why are you telling him that I made it? Dario, you haven't eaten all night. Are you hungry? You should at least try a few mouthfuls. I'm not hungry, Dario said. Pam's expression changed. She couldn't understand Monica's actions. Even if you're not hungry, it's still polite to eat, Monica said. This was specially prepared for you by my mother. Are you trying to insult her? She forcefully placed the bowl in front of Dario. I don't like to eat at night, he said. Monica was clearly getting angry, but she still had a smile on her face. She handed the bowl to him. Just this once, make an exception. It's been a difficult night for my mum. If you don't eat it, won't it be a waste of her kindness? Episode 329. Monica's Betrayal. When David heard that Monica had made the chicken soup, he rushed in and snatched the bowl from her hand. Hey, Monica, Dario might not appreciate your soup, but I do. I say, Dario, you really don't know how to appreciate good fortune. This was made by Monica herself. He raised the bowl to his lips and drained it all, not even using a spoon. David, stop, Monica said. David's expression changed. As soon as he finished swallowing, a strange feeling spread from his lips and down through his body. He felt a wave of heat as if there was desire spreading from his heart and igniting his loins. He looked at Monica with a shocked expression and then at the soup in his hand. He understood why she had tried to force Dario to drink this bowl. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions. There was anger, disappointment, and deep love for her. His legs went weak and he almost fell, catching himself on the edge of a table. Dario went to support him and asked, "What's wrong?" "This soup was drugged," David said in a weak voice. Looking at Monica, he shouted angrily, "Monica, what did you put in there? You actually tried to drug him?" He stuck his fingers down his throat until he retched and vomited up the soup he had just eaten. But he still felt dizzy. Some of the drug must have remained in his system. Monica hadn't expected Dario to finish all the soup, so she had added a high dose of the aphrodisiac. She hadn't expected that it would be David who suffered the consequences. She gave them a blank look. David covered his throat and sighed helplessly. "Monica, I thought you were better than this. I always thought that you were a kind woman. How could you do such a thing?" His romantic notion of her had completely collapsed, but Monica looked like she didn't care at all. "Monica, is what David said true?" Pam asked. She couldn't believe that she would do such a thing. No wonder she had wanted to make supper for no reason and had insisted on bringing it over herself. It also explained why she had wanted Pam to take the credit. Pam had just assumed she was being kind. She had never dreamed her daughter had been adding drugs to the dinner. Monica coldly glanced at David and then at Dario. "I don't know what you guys are talking about. David, don't make up nonsense just because you ate something bad." Evelyn watched all this in shock. She remembered Monica once promising she would help her. She hadn't expected that she would use such a method, though. She was afraid that Dario would be angry and hurriedly climbed out of the bed. "Dario, don't misunderstand," she said. "This has nothing to do with me. I didn't know that my sister would do such a thing." Monica's expression turned ugly. She hadn't expected her sister to push all the blame onto her, even though it had indeed been her own idea. Dario merely glanced at them with indifference and then respectfully said to Pam, "We should go. You all need to get some rest." He helped David walk away. David's eyes were full of pain. Before he left, he glared at Monica and said with disappointment, "Monica, even if you wanted your sister to be with Dario, you didn't have to do it in such a mean way. And I'm telling you, even if Dario had been the one to eat this bowl of soup, he wouldn't have done as you wished. You underestimate him." He knew Dario too well. If he had drunk the soup just then, he would have rather died than done anything that would hurt Jade. Dario pulled David away expressionlessly. They had just left the house when David collapsed. Dario got an arm around him and dragged him to the car. David kept mumbling Monica's name, crying and laughing. Jade had once accidentally taken this drug, so Dario was very clear about how it functioned. He had just never expected Monica to attempt to administer it to him. He sighed and forcefully threw David into the back seat of the car. He picked up a bottle of mineral water and splashed it onto his face. The cold water woke David up instantly. When he opened his eyes, he found that his goddess, Monica, was gone. A handsome face that looked like an iceberg was leaning over him. With a drunk giggle, he said, "Hey, Dario, what do you want? I'm afraid you're not really my type." Dario narrowed his eyes. He mercilessly poured the rest of the water on David's face while David rolled around on the back seat talking nonsense. "My Monica, my goddess, why would she do such a thing?" Dario drove him to the hospital and left him in the care of the doctors. As soon as David was in safe hands, he got back in his car and sped home. As Monica was about to leave, Pam stepped in front of her. Although she was only Monica's stepmother, she felt she had done something wrong in failing to properly educate her. "Monica, how could you do such a thing? Do you want to ruin your sister's innocence?" "I did it for her own good, otherwise she'd never get Dario," Monica said. "You can't force them together like that. If the Fosters find out about this, what will they think of us?" Pam said sternly. She rarely got angry with Monica, but this time, Monica was deeply in the wrong. Monica sighed and said impatiently, "That's enough. I know I was wrong. I'm very tired now. I need to go and rest." Her plan had backfired. She had intended to lock the door after Dario drank the bowl of soup and let Evelyn and Dario's artificial lust take its course. Then, Dario would have been forced to marry her even if he didn't like her. Episode 330. When I was young. I was sure that my plan would work. I never expected David to turn up out of the blue, and I didn't expect Dario to turn down the soup, Monica thought. My plan is ruined. Monica's scheme had been designed to ensure that Dario ended up with Evelyn, rather than Jade, but it hadn't worked. "Monica, you need to go and apologize in person. What on earth were you thinking?" Pam said in a stern voice. She didn't want the Fosters to look down on the Harpers, and she didn't want Monica's reputation to be damaged. "I understand what I need to do, Mum," Monica replied sullenly, and she left the room. Evelyn, who was lying on the bed, burst into tears. "I never thought that Monica would do something so drastic for me," she thought sadly. "I want Dario to know that it didn't have anything to do with me. I can't let him think that it was me." Pam misunderstood why Evelyn was crying and said, "Evelyn, don't cry. I know you liked Dario since you were young, but we can't force him to fall in love with you. I promise that I'll even find you an even better man." Evelyn buried her head under the blanket, her thin shoulders rising up and down as she cried. She had tried her best to get Dario to notice her, studying hard and learning new skills, always with a view to him falling in love with her. But it hadn't worked. "Mum, I really love him. I don't know what to do to make him love me back. I just can't forget him," Evelyn said between sobs. She was so distressed that she found it hard to breathe. Pam's heart ached as she stroked her daughter's hair. "Evelyn, don't be like this. Even if he doesn't like you in that way, you mustn't do anything stupid again. If you don't respect yourself, how can you expect others to respect you? If you want him to love you first you have to love yourself. If you hurt yourself to get his attention, then the only type of attention he will give you is pity. Please listen to me. Trust your mum. The most important thing for you to do is recover and become healthy again." Evelyn sobbed and nodded as she listened to her mother's words. Then she threw herself into Pam's warm embrace. "Mum, I know you're right. I won't do anything stupid anymore. I know that all I achieved was to make him feel disgusted with me. I'll get better, and then maybe he'll begin to like me," she said in a hopeful voice. "I believe in you, Evelyn, but I need you to know that if you do anything stupid like that again, then I'll go with you. Do you understand?" Pam said, looking into her daughter's eyes with a serious expression. "I only have one daughter. If she dies, then I'll want to die too," Pam thought. Evelyn frowned as she listened to her. She put her hands to her face and said, "Mum, I know it was wrong. I won't try to kill myself again. I'll listen to you. You must never hurt yourself because of me." "I can promise you that I won't, but only if you make a promise to me too," Pam said. "Promise me that you'll never try to kill yourself again." "Okay, I promise," Evelyn said as she sobbed. She leaned against her mother and nestled into her as if she had returned to her childhood. Then they chatted for a long time until Evelyn finally fell into a deep sleep in her mother's arms. It was just before 5 o'clock in the morning, and the sun had already risen when Dario returned to the foster family home. He went to his room, showered, and then walked into the corridor toward the guest room where Jade had spent the night. In the corridor, he unexpectedly met his grandma. Isabel always got up early to do her morning exercises, and she was surprised to see her grandson. "Dario, have you just come back? If you're not going to bed, then where are you going?" she asked, suspiciously. "Good morning, Grandma. I'm going to find Jade," he replied honestly, as he continued walking toward the guest room. Isabel frowned, clearly dissatisfied with his answer, and stepped in front of him to block his way. "Stop right there, Dario. You have to act properly. You must sleep in separate rooms. Just imagine if news of you skulking to her room got out," Isabel said in a raised voice. "It doesn't matter. She'll be part of the family sooner or later anyway," Dario replied as he walked around her, unlocked the guest room door with a spare key and went inside. Isabel was left standing in the middle of the corridor, feeling helpless and angry. Dario's grandfather, Mr. Walter, had awakened after Dario had left the house the night before and had been told about Jade and Dario and about Isabel's misgivings. He was familiar with Jade because he had often watched her on TV. He had seen Isabel get up and had followed her into the corridor. "Isabel, why do you have such a big problem with Jade? I think she seems like a nice young lady. At least she works hard and supports herself. She's not a greedy woman." Isabel turned around and sighed helplessly. "Actually, it's not that I don't like her. It's just that I think Dario can find someone better. With everything that he has going for him, he could have any woman he wants. Why does he have to choose an actress?" "It's your conservative thinking, Isabel. What's wrong with acting? I often see her on TV, so she must be quite successful. Besides, it has to be Dario's choice whom he falls in love with. You should believe in our grandson's judgment," Walter said, trying to comfort his wife. Isabel frowned as she stared at the guest room door. Walter saw her worried face and went to her. "Try not to worry about it all. Dario's young and he has his life to lead. We should enjoy our old age and let the young ones do as they wish." Isabel's eyes were filled with regret and helplessness. "It's all my fault," she said sadly. "When I was young, I focused too much on my work and I neglected my family. Now I have lots of spare time, but Dario is Sharon's son, and there's not much I can do except worry." Episode 331. What if somebody hears? "I know you feel sorry for Sharon, but you know Sharon, and so do you know Dario. He has his own life and opinions. We shouldn't interfere too much. We need to let the young people make their own decisions," Walter advised. Isabel sighed. Walter took her hand, smiled fondly at her and said, "Let's go for a stroll in the garden." Walter was someone very understanding, and he knew how to bind his family together. For the last few years, he had been sick, and there are days when he fails to respond and goes into a deep sleep because of his medicines. Sometimes he is conscious, but he can neither move nor speak due to neural damage with age. He would often stare at the television playing before him with a blank expression, but he could listen and see it all. That was how he got familiar with this popular actor named Jade. Dario was relieved to find Jade fast asleep. He climbed into bed, lay down beside her, and looked at her lovingly. Jade felt the warmth from his body, and she instinctively snuggled into his familiar embrace with a contented smile. Dario reached out his hand, stroked her face, and kissed her softly on the lips. She moaned in her sleep and moved slightly. Afraid that he would wake her, he lay very still, hugged her, and closed his eyes. Jade woke up at 7 a.m. She was used to getting up very early to start filming, and 7 o'clock was a late start for her. "I hope they don't think I usually get up this late," she thought worriedly. "I need to remember that I'm not staying in a hotel. Dario's family won't like me if they think I'm lazy." She was in the process of getting out of bed when she felt a strong arm reach around her and drag her backward. She turned her head in surprise and realized that Dario was in bed with her. "We slept in separate rooms last night, didn't we?" she thought. "How could he be in here, and why is he naked?" "Dario, you—" she began. Before she could finish her sentence, Dario leaned forward and kissed her on the lips. Jade was still thinking about making sure that she was up and about so that no one would think of her as lazy, and she pushed his chest in an attempt to resist him. "Good morning," Dario said as Jade retreated from his kiss. His voice sounded sleepy. "Good morning," she replied, a little dazed. "Dario, why are you sleeping here?" "Did you miss me?" Dario asked, ignoring his wife's question and shuffling closer to her warm body. Jade smiled mischievously and decided to tease him. She pouted and said, "Why would I miss you? I was busy sleeping." As soon as she had finished speaking, Dario pinned her to the bed and stared down at her with a burning gaze. He looked into her eyes intently and she blushed. She turned her head to the side and asked timidly, "Are you all right, Dario? What do you want?" "What do you think?" Dario replied. "How would I know?" she said. "Have you forgotten?" he asked in a deep voice. "Forgotten what?" she asked. He narrowed his eyes and leaned in so that his lips were touching her ear and said, "You need to think of me 100 times a day. You remember what happens if you forget even one of those times. All I can think is that you must really want us to do it." "No, stop talking nonsense," she protested. "Anyway, I was lying to you just then. When I was asleep, I thought of you at least 100 times, she said, blushing furiously. I must remember not to tease him again, she thought. It's too late to backtrack now, he said, and he rubbed himself against her provocatively. She could feel the heat of his arousal, and her body tensed up. I don't know what time he got home, but he must have come back to my room instead of his own, she thought. I was worried that you would miss me if you woke up and couldn't find me, he replied, his eyes fixed intently on hers. So he came here to make sure that I wouldn't worry, she thought, happy that her husband was so considerate. Dario, thank you, she muttered. I always want to be near him, she thought. I can't imagine what life would be like without him. She took the initiative to kiss him on the lips, and she immediately felt his manhood grow in response. She blushed at the thought of the effect she had on him. She lay still then, not wanting things to go too far. I'm your husband. There's no need to thank me, but if you really want to, there is one way you could show your gratitude, he said, suggestively, as he rubbed against her. Dario, it's already late. We don't have time for this, she said, as she extricated herself from under him. We can't do that here in Dario's family home. There are so many people, and it would be so awkward if any of them heard us, she thought. He looked at her with seductive eyes. Absolutely not, she said decisively to herself as much as to Dario. As she lay next to him enjoying his warmth, her mind wandered back to what Isabel had said the previous night, and she felt nervous about what the day would bring. Isabel was right. Dario could find a much better woman than me, she thought sadly. Dario, I love you, but I feel like you're too good for me. You deserve more than I can give you, she said, with a feeling of inferiority. Episode 332, 10 Times a Night. Before Jade could even finish what she was going to say, Dario kissed her family and nibbled her bottom lip. When he released her lip, he held her chin in his hand and stared at her through narrowed eyes. There was an angry undertone to his deep voice as he said, Don't ever say that again. If you ever think there's a gap between us, then I'll have to make sure that there isn't a gap there anymore. As he spoke, he thrusted his body against her, and she immediately understood his meaning. Her eyes widened in surprise, and her face reddened again. Seeing Jade's face, Dario quickly removed the weight from her body and asked worriedly, What's wrong? Did I hurt you? Jade raised her eyes and stared into his handsome face. She hung her arms tenderly around his neck and said, You didn't hurt me. Dario, do you know how scared I've been that I'm not good enough for you? Sometimes I want you to be less good to me, just so that I'll feel like there was less of a gap between us and that I deserve to be with you. Don't be silly. There has never been any reason for you to feel like that. Besides, if you can so utterly conquer an excellent man like me, that means that you must be someone very special, he said playfully. I don't feel like someone special, she replied shyly, embarrassed by his praise. You must never say that again. Do you understand? Otherwise, I will make love to you 10 times a night, he said, with a stern expression. Jade widened her eyes in mock surprise. 10 times? I'm afraid that would kill us both, she said. What are you afraid of? As long as my wife is satisfied, I'm willing to die. At least we'd die happy, he replied. As he spoke, he began moving his hands around her body sensually, his eyes full of passion. Jade's heart trembled, and she quickly shuffled out from under him. Dario, we should get up now. If we get up too late, I'm afraid your mother will think that I'm lazy. Besides, I still have to shoot this afternoon, and I should be able to walk properly, she said. Dario narrowed his eyes, aware that his wife was avoiding him. He kissed her, got out of bed, and walked to the bathroom. As he was about to go back to the bedroom, Dario received a phone call from Lucas. He must have news, he thought. As usual, Lucas started his report as soon as Dario had answered the phone. Mr. Foster, Ray Stevens has woken up and has been discharged from the hospital. He's investigating the photos and videos of his daughter, but don't worry, I'm confident that he won't be able to trace them back to me," he said. Dario smiled and said in a deep voice, "No need to hide it. I want him to know that those photos were my doing." Surprise flashed across Lucas's face, and he asked in confusion, "Why would you want that?" "To keep the Stevens family and the Stevens group away," Dario replied with a cold smile. "That makes sense," thought Lucas. "He wants Ray to keep the Stevens group restrained and make life difficult for Bruce and Amelia. That's a clever idea." "Is there any other news?" Dario asked. Lucas continued to report. "Amelia has had a lot of negative publicity in Washington. The Stevens Group products endorsed by Amelia have been completely boycotted. Their stock prices have been falling and they are on the verge of bankruptcy. Amelia is now the center for hatred, and even her friends won't dare to come out and support her." Dario listened contentedly, not feeling the need to respond. Everything was working out as he had expected. After Lucas finished updating his boss, he paused and said hesitantly, "By the way, Mr. Foster, what about Miss Gray?" There was no answer, and Lucas looked at his phone screen and saw that Dario had ended the call. "I don't understand," Lucas thought. "Why does he not want to know anything about her? We looked for Mimi for 5 years, and now that we found her, he doesn't want anything to do with her." Lucas had checked the bank card he had left with her, but even that hadn't been used. "She's a stubborn woman," he thought. Dario put his phone by the sink, grabbed Jade, and kissed her as she entered the bathroom. Her face was radiant with happiness. "I love waking up to him every morning," she thought. She was about to leave the bathroom when she heard Dario's phone buzz. She picked it up to give it to him and saw that he had a new message. Overcome with curiosity, she opened the message and was shocked by its contents. "Dario, I acted so badly last night. I promise you that I will never do it again. I'm going to make myself better in the hope that you will grow to like me more." Who on earth is that message from? She thought, as the number wasn't saved. Episode 333. Where was Dario last night? Jade began to panic about the mysterious message. What does it mean? Where did Dario go last night? She wondered. He was very serious after he'd been on his phone last night. It's obvious the message is from a woman and that she's interested in him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have sent a message like that, she thought. Whoever it is, she knows his phone number, and it seems like she knows him well. I need to find out who sent that message and what happened last night, she thought desperately. Her imagination ran wild as she began to think of what could have happened the previous night, and then she shook her head. Dario isn't like that, she thought. I should trust him. She had just decided to give the phone back to Dario when she noticed him walking toward her. I forgot to take my phone, he said as he took it from her hand. Jade smiled timidly, but said nothing. Dario looked at his phone and noticed that the message had already been read. He saw his wife's troubled expression and said, Don't you want to know who sent it? Jade desperately wanted to know, but she shook her head with a no. There was determination in her eyes as she said, I don't, because I believe in my husband. She leaned forward and kissed him on the cheek. This man belongs to me, she thought. I should trust him completely. I will never doubt him again, she decided. Anyway, the last time I didn't trust him, I made myself look like a complete fool with the whole Monica situation. Maybe it's one of his relatives. He certainly has enough of them, she thought. Dario smiled and held her in his arms. It's my cousin. She ran away from home yesterday, and I went to look for her, he said, with a straight face. Jade felt a surge of relief and relaxed into his embrace without asking any more questions. Thank you for telling me, she said, without a hint of doubt in her pretty eyes. Dario's heartbeat quickened as she nestled her body into his. He was about to stroke her face when there was a knock at the door. Dario's eyes flashed with irritation, and Jade felt disappointment at being interrupted. I can't wait to take her away from this damn place, he thought. Who is it? Dario shouted in a hostile tone. The maid outside felt flustered by his tone and paused for a moment before she said, Hello, Mr. Foster. Mrs. Foster asked me to call Miss Winslet to have breakfast with her. I'll be right down, Jade called, her face fraught with worry. I'm so embarrassed. She actually sent someone to find me for breakfast. She must think that I'm so lazy, she said, as she rushed around the room trying to get ready. Dario opened the door, glared at the maid and said, "If you dare to tell anyone that you saw me here, you'll regret it." The maid nodded and said in a panic, "Don't worry, Mr. Foster, I didn't see anything. I'll never tell anyone." She rushed down the corridor and glanced behind her fearfully. Jade walked over to him and prodded him in the back. "Why did you scare her like that?" she asked. Dario turned around and looked at her tenderly. "My gentleness belongs to you alone," he said. He was making sure that she doesn't gossip about me so that it won't damage my reputation, she thought, as she stared into his eyes. Dario took her hand and led her downstairs. As they entered the dining room, Jade noticed that Dario's parents, grandparents, and sisters were already seated. Jade let go of Dario's hand and greeted them all nervously. "Good morning, everybody," she said, in a slightly wavering voice. Jade went over to Deborah to chat with her, but Sharon interjected with a smile and said, "Do sit down, Jade, or the breakfast will get cold." Deborah stood up and took Jade's hand. "Come and sit with me, Jade," she said in a welcoming voice. Jade smiled in embarrassment and sat down next to Deborah. After a few bites, Jade was struck first by how delicious the food was, and then by how familiar it tasted. "This tastes just like when Dario makes breakfast for me," she thought. She looked at Dario with a quizzical expression, but his calm face was impassive. "I wonder if Dario cooked the breakfast for everyone," she thought. The atmosphere at breakfast was quite harmonious. Jade noticed how affectionate Donald was towards Sharon. He served her food and poured her coffee in much the same way as Dario often did for Jade. "It looks like I have Donald to thank for the way Dario treats me," she thought. Halfway through the meal, Isabel put her knife and fork down, took a deep breath, and looked at Dario and Jade. "Dario, I can come to terms with the fact that you and Miss Winslet are together," she said in a very serious tone. Everyone at the table seemed to be shocked by the unexpected announcement. "Has she decided that she likes me?" Jade thought. That was much easier than I expected it to be. Jade smiled broadly, but after a short pause, Isabel continued. "But I have a condition." Dario looked at his grandma with a sense of trepidation, aware that she was likely to give an unpleasant ultimatum. Episode 334. The Support of a Good Man. "Dario, you can marry this woman, but Miss Winslet must promise me that she will quit the entertainment industry," Isabel said seriously. Jade's heart raced. Her feeling of joy and relief from only a few minutes before turned to bitterness and resentment. She was desperately thinking of what she could say when Dario took the initiative. He reached under the table and held her hand, and then said in a direct manner, "That's impossible. Even if Jade were to agree, I wouldn't let her give up acting." Jade was shocked to hear him speak so frankly to his grandma. His answer was perfect, she thought. She hadn't expected Isabel to make such a pronouncement after having offered her $10 million to leave Dario. "I could consider taking a break from acting to have a child," she thought. "I'll want to have a baby sooner or later with the man I love, but the break would be only temporary. I couldn't completely give up on my dreams." There was another reason that Jade didn't want to give up on her acting career. Having found out that Dario was a member of the super wealthy Foster family, she was very conscious of the gap in social status between them. "The only way that I can close the gap between us is if I can make my own money from acting, and that means that I have to work hard to get a stronger foothold in the entertainment industry," she thought. "I don't ever want to go back to the life I had when I was growing up," she thought. Ever since she had started paying for her grandmother's medical expenses, Jade had been acutely aware of the importance of money, and she didn't want to lose Dario because of not having enough of it. "I have to work hard to earn money. Only then can I make my family happy and close the distance between Dario and me," she thought. "I might be able to have a baby within a year, but giving up my dreams is not something I'm willing to do." Deborah saw Jade looking sad and thoughtful. She put down her knife and fork, walked around the table, stood next to her grandma, and said affectionately, "Grandma, why do you have to try to get Jade to stop acting? She's a wonderful actress, and I love watching her. Monica is an actress too, and you don't tell her that she has to stop. I think you're prejudiced against Jade." Isabel's gaze softened a little as she listened to her granddaughter. "Deborah, I'm not prejudiced against Miss Winslet. I know that Monica is an actress too, and that's how I know how busy actresses are.
Think about it. How many times a year do you see Monica? I know you get to see her on TV, but how many times do you get to see her in real life now that she's an actress? Sometimes you don't even get to see her on New Year's Day. If Miss Winslet becomes even more famous, she'll just get busier and busier. So how can they have a happy family if they can't spend time together? How will she take care of her children in the future?
Grandma, you don't need to worry about any children they may have. I can help Jade to look after the little ones, and if that doesn't work out, then they could hire a nanny, Deborah said earnestly. As Jade mulled over Isabel's words, she lowered her head and wondered if she had a point. What if she's right? I'm getting busier and busier all the time, whether it's shooting a movie or doing an advertisement. I seem to be spending less and less time with Dario, she thought guiltily as she clenched her fists. I don't even have the time to make breakfast for my husband. Dario noticed his wife's change of mood. He held her hand tightly and then said to his grandmother in a low voice, "Grandma, I want you to understand something. My wife can do whatever she likes. I can accompany her when she's filming or shooting commercials. It's not like we're forever apart and I don't need her to take care of me. I'm not a child anymore. I like her tenacity and her spirit, and I don't want to change the things I love about her." Dario had spoken very eloquently from the heart. His family wasn't used to hearing him be so open about his feelings. It was rare for him to be so talkative. He held Jade's small hand tightly in his own, making her feel less nervous. She felt his warmth, and her eyes filled with tenderness as she looked at him. His words had moved her. With a husband like Dario by my side, what else could I want? She thought. Deborah walked over to Dario and said, "You're so good to Jade. It makes me feel jealous. From now on, you need to be kinder to me, just like you are to Jade." Dario looked at her and frowned. "I can't treat you the same way that I treat Jade. You need to find a good man who'll look after you," he said firmly. Deborah hit him on the arm angrily and said, "You're a terrible big brother. When I was young, you treated me well and looked after me. But now that Jade is here, you've forgotten all about me. You care about her more than your sister." "All right, Debbie, stop messing around," Sharon chided her. "How can you be jealous of your sister-in-law?" Jade smiled instantly when she heard Dario's mum say sister-in-law. At least Dario's mum has accepted me, she thought happily. 135. An invitation. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make Isabel like me, Jade thought, confident that with Dario's support, even that was possible. Sharon smiled at Jade and said, "Are you free today, Jade?" "I'm afraid that I've got a film this afternoon in Los Angeles," Jade replied apologetically. If it hadn't been for the press conference and the signing ceremony for the new product, she would have been filming in Los Angeles that morning. As they had only just started filming The King's Palace, she thought it was better not to ask for too much leave, or it would slow down the whole production. "Well, are you free the day after tomorrow?" Sharon asked. Jade thought about it carefully. "I should be filming the day after tomorrow, and there's an interview that day that I really should do," she thought. "I'm not sure. Why do you ask?" Jade replied. Sharon looked at Dario and smiled before turning back to Jade. "The day after tomorrow is Walter's 80th birthday party. I was hoping that you would be able to make it," she said. Although there was no way to guarantee what Walter's health would be like, the family felt that it was important to celebrate his birthday, and Dario and Sharon thought it was a good opportunity for Jade to get to know them all better. Also, they knew that he would love for Jade to be there. "The day after tomorrow is Walter's birthday?" Jade exclaimed, feeling embarrassed that she hadn't known already. She glared at Dario and whispered into his ear, "Why don't you tell me about these things earlier so that I can prepare a gift?" "You are gift enough," he whispered back. Dario then looked up and announced, "Jade will be here. I'll bring her myself." Jade was happy that Dario had taken the initiative to accept the invitation. "I'll take leave if I have to. Nothing's more important than Walter's birthday," she thought. Sharon nodded contentedly, and everyone seemed relieved that Jade would be there, apart from Isabel, who was still brooding because Jade had not agreed to give up acting. Later that morning, Dario took Jade to see Walter before driving her to the private airport. On the plane, Jade was restless. She was happy to have been invited to Walter's party, but she also felt somewhat flustered. "I have no idea what kind of gift to buy for someone so rich. If I get something too cheap, then I'll embarrass Dario, and they'll think that I'm stingy. But I can't afford to buy something expensive," she thought, feeling extremely distressed. She sighed heavily. She felt that problems like that would arise as long as the huge gap in their income and social status remained. Since Jade had gotten on the plane, she hadn't said a word. Dario put his arm around her and squeezed her shoulder gently. She leaned into him in response.
"Are you fretting about Grandpa's party?"
Dario asked. Jade frowned slightly and nodded. Then she poked his powerful chest as if she was blaming him. "It's all your fault. Why didn't you tell me earlier so that I had more time to prepare a gift?" she asked accusingly. "When your mother told me today, I didn't know what to say. The day after tomorrow is hardly any notice at all," she added. She twisted her body to extricate herself from his arms, but Dario used his strength to keep her in his embrace. He leaned close to her ear and said softly, "Don't move, unless you want to have a good time with me." Jade felt herself stiffen. Surely he wouldn't try to do anything here on the plane, she thought. She looked around and could see that Lucas, David, and a few others were sitting nearby. She sat very still, afraid that he would keep his word. David noticed the commotion and glanced over before promptly looking away.
"I don't want to see couples frolicking when my own love life is going so badly. Dario never considers my feelings,"
he thought miserably. He took out his phone and looked longingly at a picture of Monica.
"I don't know if it's good for me to keep yearning after her. She's rejected me so many times that it shouldn't hurt anymore, but it does,"
he thought gloomily. David was shocked after what she had tried to do to Dario. Monica would do anything to achieve her goals in life, but David found it easier to imagine her as naive rather than ruthless. He sat there feeling dejected, while a few seats away Dario was contentedly hugging his wife as if there was no one else on the plane. Dario kissed Jade on the cheek and said disapprovingly,
"Didn't I tell you that you don't need to buy anything? Grandpa will just be happy that you're there. All he wants is to see you and to know that he will one day meet his great-grandchildren. He's been thinking about it for a long time."
"He's been thinking about it for a long time," Jade repeated in her head. She thought carefully about what Dario had just said and felt that something was wrong. And then she thought back to how they had come to be married. Episode 336, Violence of Pleasure. Jade recalled when Dario had proposed to her. They had only met twice, and Dario had proposed out of the blue. He told her that he didn't want love, just a wife. A sudden realization struck her. She turned to her husband and looked at him searchingly. "Dario, did you get married because of your grandfather? It's not just you who wants a child. Your grandfather wants you to have a child, and you want to please him," she said, with an angry look in her eyes. Dario looked impassive and didn't answer, so she reached out and hit him hard in the arm. He didn't react at first, but when she moved to hit him again, he grabbed her hand and pulled it to his mouth and kissed it.
"That is indeed one of the reasons that I wanted to marry you,"
he said honestly. Jade's expression turned to one of indignation.
"He actually got married to please his grandfather? How could he do that? Did he not care about my feelings at all?" she wondered.
Just as Jade was preparing herself to tell Dario how disgusting his behavior had been, he spoke very seriously to her.
"Of course, there was another very important reason that I wanted to marry you. I wanted to be with you. I wouldn't have married any other woman, even for Grandpa,"
he said placatingly, before kissing her hand again. Jade met his gaze and pouted. She had no intention of being appeased so easily. Dario looked at his wife and frowned at her stubbornness. He held her tightly and said,
"There's one other very important thing. You stripped me naked and ravished me. Once you had used my body like that, it meant that you were responsible for it for the rest of your life."
"Dario, what nonsense are you talking about?" she replied, shocked at his unexpected comment.
"From the day you pushed me down to the floor, you were responsible for me,"
Dario continued with a hint of humor in his voice. Jade blushed furiously.
"I would never have asked him if I knew he would start talking like that," she thought.
"I wish I could just hide away somewhere." She heard someone snicker nearby, and she looked over to see that David was covering his mouth and laughing desperately. Beside him, Lucas's shoulders were shaking uncontrollably. Lucas had always had a serious demeanor, and he was surprised that his boss had unexpectedly made him laugh. Jade felt utterly humiliated. Did he have to mention what happened in the bar? She thought. Did he want them to know about it? Is he proud that I was the one who took the initiative that night? I only kissed him in the bar. It's not as if I had my hands all over him or anything, she thought. Oh, why did I pester him to explain himself? I feel mortified. Jade coughed and pinched Dario's thigh. Dario, can you please talk more quietly? I'll never forgive you if you say anything like that again, she thought.
I don't want you to forget who started our relationship, he said. She glared at him angrily and pinched his thigh again. Then she tried to twist out of his grip to lower her head in an effort to hide her face, but he held on to her tightly. What are you doing? I want to go down, she exclaimed. Why do you want to go down there? He asked in mock confusion. Jade scowled at him, and then she glared at David, who was still trying unsuccessfully to stifle his laughter. She felt utterly shamefaced and didn't dare to ask any more questions in case her husband humiliated her further. I wish I could get off this plane, she thought, and she covered her face with her hands. Dario shot David a warning glance, and then he took Jade in his arms, carried her to the bedroom, and then threw her unceremoniously onto the bed. Jade looked up at him and asked, Dario, what are you doing? What do you want? I want to have sex with you, of course, he replied simply. He took out his phone and looked at the screen. We have about an hour and a half before we reach our destination. Do you think that's enough time? He asked. Dario looked at her seductively as he climbed on top of her and kissed her passionately. Jade tried to push him away, but she was unable to resist his strength, and in the end, she succumbed to both his will and her own desire. While he kissed her, he moved his hands around her slim body, tantalizing her with his touch. Jade was intoxicated by him. It felt like a long time since they had had sex, and she was surprised by how much she had actually yearned for him. 337. More money, less time. Images flashed through Jade's mind of what she wanted to do with Dario, and she was shocked by her own fantasies. He seemed to sense what she was thinking, and he looked into her face and smiled seductively. He took her hands in his and moved them on top of her head, and then he looked down appreciatively at her body, mesmerized by her graceful figure. You're so beautiful, he whispered in a deep and sensual voice that was filled with charm. She already felt dizzy from his relentless kisses, and she was hypnotized by his deep voice. She lay there in a sort of trance, breathing heavily, and said, Dario, be gentle. He tried to restrain himself and move slowly, but the sound of her voice and her breathing had intensified his need for her, and their lovemaking was passionate. When they got off the plane, Jade flashed an angry look at her husband. She felt exhausted, and her muscles ached from exertion. I'll never believe that man again, she decided. After Dario had dropped Jade off in Los Angeles, he flew on to Washington, where he had matters that he wanted to attend to. Jade was picked up from the airport by a private car to take her directly to the King's Palace set. She was thankful to have eaten lunch on the plane, and she felt ready for the day. She took a deep breath. It's going to be another busy day, she thought, but I don't regret choosing this life. I need to work hard to prove that I'm worthy of Dario. When they arrived at the film studio, Jade was welcomed by her makeup artist and stylist. Her character had an elaborate hairstyle, and her makeup was complicated, so they took a long time to prepare her for the afternoon's filming. Violet sat next to her and chatted with her to pass the time. She took out her phone and began reading things that she thought might interest Jade from the news and social media. Wow, Jade, you have so many fans now. Almost half of America is following you. Jade chuckled at the overstatement. Stop exaggerating, Violet. There are millions, though. You've almost hit 10 million followers. That's more than a lot of A-list celebrities. I think you could be this year's movie queen. You were born to be a superstar, exclaimed Violet excitedly. Violet, please lower your voice. You're embarrassing me, Jade said bashfully. Although she relished her success, part of her didn't want to be so high profile. The thought that it could come between her and Dario made her heart sink. I need to be successful to close the gap between us, she thought. But the more famous I get, the more I'll have to work and the more time I'll need to spend away from him. I might not have earned much money when I played supporting roles, but at least I had free time to spend with Dario. Now that I have a lead role, I have less and less spare time, she thought. Oh, by the way, Jade, do you know what the main piece of news is today? Violet asked animatedly as she held Jade's phone out toward her. What is it? Jade asked as she took the phone and looked at the screen. As she scrolled down, she could see that there was a stream of photos of Amelia Stevens in compromising positions with a range of different men. Violet shook her head and said contemptuously, I don't know what she was thinking. I feel stupid that I used to envy rich young women like her. I would never have thought that she would act like that. She has slept with so many men. It even says that she's been with directors that she worked with, so that they would give her special treatment. As Amelia was Bruce's elder sister, Jade had known her for a long time.
and she was shocked to read the gossip about her. She was always quite annoying and she had a bit of a temper, but I never knew that her private life was like that, she thought, as she read a comment about Amelia having had sex with multiple men at the same time. With the power the Stevens family has, how could they let these photos leak out, and who released them? She wondered. Whoever arranged for these photos to end up online must be even more influential than them. Whoever did that must really hate Amelia, Jade said. Her reputation is utterly destroyed. I doubt she'll ever be able to show her face in public again. I don't know who released the photos, but it's a pretty big collection, Violet said. I heard that her father was so angry that the shock was so much for him and he ended up in hospital. Amelia must have provoked the wrong person. I read that when she was a model, she slept with some powerful men to get famous. At the height of her fame, she was almost more famous than you, she added, with a snort of derision. Jade's face was expressionless. Any feeling she once had for anyone in the Stevens family had long gone. Amelia's story is sad, she thought, but she did it to herself. Once her makeup was finished, Jade gazed in the mirror and appreciated the stylist's hard work. She looked elegant and refined. Her silky black hair was tied up in the style of a Tudor lady, and she wore a long, yellow dress and a simple necklace that accentuated her beautiful neck. She did a twirl in front of the mirror, and her dress swayed elegantly as she moved. Episode 338. Break the door down. Violet was stunned by the beauty of Jade's costume, and she took some pictures of her and posted them online. The reaction was instant as Jade's fans commented on how she looked. It was all positive publicity, and it added to the expectations surrounding the release of the King's Palace. Dario, who was still on the plane, took out his phone, looked at the new photos of his wife and smiled. He made sure that he kept up to date with anything that Violet posted about her. Violet had just put the phone away when Caroline walked toward them and said, "Jade, they're ready for you." Caroline managed several A-list actors, but it was clear that she had attached a great deal of importance to Jade, as she had been devoting a lot of time to her. "Okay, I'll be right there," Jade replied. She hurriedly tidied up her clothes and rushed over to the set with Caroline and Violet. That afternoon, Jade was due to film a scene with a well-known actress, Claire Jackson, who played an important but arrogant lady in the King's court. Jade, on the other hand, played an attractive young woman who had just entered the palace, but had been bullied. The director had set aside some time for Jade and Claire to get to know each other before the filming was due to begin. Jade was just about to take the initiative to go over and greet her fellow actress when Claire walked over to her. She was in full costume, and she looked affable. "Miss Winslet, your costume really suits you. It's beautiful. You look like you're actually from the Tudor times," she said with a friendly smile. Claire had been in plenty of movies, but she usually played supporting roles. She was pleased with her part, but she was a little surprised that someone as new to the industry as Jade had been given such an important role. Before Jade could answer, a loud, crisp voice called out, "Miss Winslet, hello!" Jade looked past Claire and saw another young woman also dressed in a Tudor costume. "Isn't that Miranda, who I met in New York when I shot the Adele Barracu commercial?" she thought. "She asked for my autograph. I didn't expect her to be here." Jade looked quizzically at Miranda and at her costume, trying to place which character she was playing. "Mimi, I didn't know you were in the movie. Are you playing the palace maid, Agnes?" Jade said with a smile. Agnes was a good role to have. She was a palace maid who offered advice to the character Lady Margaret. Miranda nodded and smiled brightly, her face filled with excitement. "Miss Winslet, it's so good to see you again. I never expected that I'd get the chance to work with you. I haven't properly thanked you for the last time we met. You really were very kind." "Not at all. It was only a small matter. It wasn't your fault that I fell," Jade replied. Jade knew that Miranda was talking about when she had tripped and fallen during the Adele Barracu commercial, and she had protected Miranda from the director's wrath. She seems to be a very grateful person. I like that about her, Jade thought. Claire saw that they were chatting happily, and she smiled and said, "It looks like you two are old acquaintances. Miss Winslet, this is our first time working together. I hope we can be friends." "I'm sure we will be," Jade replied, "but please let me know if you have any advice for me," she added respectfully, aware that Claire had been an actress for longer than her. "It's amazing that you've landed such a good part so early in your career," Claire said. "I've been at this for a while and I still don't get the lead roles. So I think it's me that needs to learn something from you," she added, as she touched Jade affectionately on the forearm. Jade was pleasantly surprised at Claire's positive attitude toward her. "No, Claire, I should learn from you. You're well respected for your performances, and I've watched everything you've been in." Although Jade was the female lead in the King's Palace, she was careful not to seem arrogant or alienate the other actresses. Claire had been originally disgruntled that such a new face in the industry had taken the leading role, but she was beginning to warm to Jade, and as they chatted, they both felt the bonds of friendship forming. Neither of them noticed that while they were talking, someone was intently observing Jade. Robert Radcliffe, also dressed in an impressive period outfit, was watching her closely. Jade felt her gaze drawn toward him, and their eyes met for a moment. She smiled politely at him and continued chatting with Claire. Robert nodded in acknowledgement and then quickly turned his eyes away from her as if nothing had happened. Jade assumed that he'd been looking around to familiarize himself with the other actors prior to filming. Back in New York at the Stevens family home, Cindy was standing outside her daughter's bedroom. "Amelia, hurry up and come out. Your father is out of the hospital and he wants to see you. Amelia, did you hear what I said to you? Amelia?" Cindy had been knocking on her daughter's door for some time, but she had received no response. Ever since the photos had appeared online, Amelia had been locked away in her room. She had hardly eaten anything, and she was still wearing the same clothes from the day that the photos had first emerged. Her hair was a mess, and she was curled up in a corner of the room, rocking back and forth. She was in a daze but could hear her name being called. She suddenly shouted loudly, "Leave me alone! Don't hurt me! Please don't hurt me! I don't want to see anyone! Just go away!" It was at that moment that her father, Ray, walked up the stairs, flanked by two burly men in dark suits. "Are you still not coming out?" Ray called as he reached the door. Then he glanced at his wife with a cold and determined expression. Cindy looked at his face and pleaded with him. "Ray, don't do anything rash. Let me have a little more time to persuade her to come out." He pushed his wife to one side roughly and said, "What morals have you been teaching our daughter? Are you proud of her? Break the door down if you have to," he said to the men behind him. "Yes, Mr. Stevens," one replied, as they stepped forward in unison. Episode 339. Not My Daughter. Amelia heard a commotion outside the door, and her whole body started to tremble. Suddenly, the door burst open, and she saw her father stride into the room with a furious expression on his face. She stood up and took a step away from him, but there was nowhere to retreat to. Ray glared at his daughter, his eyes filled with loathing. "He's never looked at me like that," she thought. "He looks terrifying." Amelia's hands shook as she looked into her father's face. "Dad," she said in a trembling voice. "How dare you still call me that? You're no daughter of mine," he shouted. He looked around the usually tidy room. It looked like a dump. Her bed sheets were strewn on the floor, prized possessions had been swept off the shelves, and several of her things had been smashed against the wall. He pointed his finger at her and yelled, "Get over here, now." When she hesitated, he shouted, "Hurry up." "No, I don't want," Amelia began, hiding her face in her hands. "Drag her over here, hurry up," he shouted to his thuggish minions, who quickly obeyed their master's orders and dragged her over to her waiting father. She knelt in front of him, her face flinching with fear. She desperately wanted to run away, but she was held back by the men behind her. Cindy had watched what had happened and had rushed forward to intervene, but Ray pushed her aside. "Ray, what are you doing? Please, Amelia is your daughter. How can you treat her like this?" "Get out of my way," he said contemptuously to his distraught wife. "She's no daughter of mine, and if you get in my way again, I'll throw you out on the streets." As he spoke, he pushed Cindy again, and she fell to the floor sobbing. Amelia crawled forward and tugged on her father's pants. "Dad, don't be like this. Please don't hit Mum. I know I was wrong, but I was the one who did it. It had nothing to do with her." Ray turned to his daughter and shouted coldly as he pointed to the door, "Get out." Seeing her father's wrath, she shook her head desperately. She was no longer being held by the two men, and she stood up and took a step backward. "No, I don't want to go. Don't hit me. Please, don't hit me." In her unhinged mind, Amelia imagined reporters all around her taking pictures of her. "Leave me alone," she screamed. "Drag her out," Ray ordered. The two men grabbed her by her arms and forced her out of the room. She resisted with all of her strength, twisting and turning in their grip, but they were too strong for her. Ray stepped forward and slapped her hard in the face. Her head swung violently to one side, and her cheek stung where his hand had struck her. The room became silent as everyone absorbed what had just happened. Amelia felt dizzy, and her ears rang from the force of her father's strike. She looked up at him with a mixture of fear and hatred. He had doted on her since she was a child, and it was the first time he had hit her. She was shocked not only that he had slapped her, but at the ruthless force he had used. The left side of her face was a deep red, and it quickly began to swell.
"You hit me, Dad. Why did you hit me? You're my father. You're meant to protect me,"
she muttered, heartbroken. She desperately wanted her father's comfort, for him to hold her and to tell her that everything was going to be okay, but he didn't. She had been vilified by strangers and abandoned by her friends, and finally, she had been rejected and despised by her own father. What is the point in life, she thought. I'm not your father. What you did has brought shame not only on yourself, but also on the whole family. You don't deserve to be a daughter of mine. You've destroyed our family's reputation, he shouted furiously, the veins on his forehead bulging visibly. He wants me out of the family, she realized in horror. I can't leave the family home. It's the only place where I can hide. I'd be so vulnerable. Where would I go? She wondered desperately. She didn't want to have to face the outside world, to be maligned by the public and the press, to have people taking photos of her wherever she went, to have to run and hide like a street rat. Dad, please don't kick me out. I can change. I won't do that sort of thing anymore, I promise. Amelia pleaded as she knelt in front of her father. If I leave this house and family, I'll be nothing, she thought. There is no future for you in this family, Amelia. I would never have believed you could act like that and bring such shame on your family. To think that I've loved you for all those years have been wasted. I've never been so disappointed in my life, he said, thinking back to the obscene photos. He felt dizzy with anger, and he panted heavily from the exertion of his ranting. He took a step backward, and he stumbled slightly, nearly losing his balance. Amelia went forward to support him, but Ray pushed her away with what remained of his strength, a look of disgust on his face at being touched by her. Dad, please don't be angry. It's all my fault and I'm sorry. Your health is more important, Amelia cried. Ray, you've only just come out of the hospital. Don't get too worked up. Try to calm down, Cindy said, trying to placate him, but he pushed her away. Calm down? He exclaimed. How can I calm down when our family's reputation is in tatters? He took a pill from his pocket and swallowed it. Are you trying to anger me to death? He asked. Amelia felt like her life had been turned upside down. She felt hopeless, and she began to cry. Dad, someone released those photos to destroy my reputation. Whoever it was wanted to destroy me and our family, she said, between sobs. Ray's fury increased as he listened to his daughter's words. He pulled his hand back to slap her again, but Cindy rushed forward and placed her body in front of her daughter's. His hand smacked against his wife's back, and she crumpled to the floor in pain. Enough! Don't hit me anymore, Ray, Cindy cried. Please, don't hurt our daughter. Episode 340. Amelia's Punishment. It's clear that someone intentionally released this trash to drag our good name through the mud, Ray said, sounding furious. The glance he gave Amelia was murderous. He looks like he wants to hit me again, she thought, terrified. I can't believe you let this happen, he shouted. You must take me for a complete fool if you think you can convince me that these photos are fake. You're not a good enough actress to sell that story to anyone. His voice dripped with contempt. The more he talked, the angrier he got. Finally, he looked at Amelia, who was still sitting on the sofa. Her head hung low, and said coldly, Fine, you want to stay here and hide from the press? You got it. I'm confined to your room indefinitely. Your meals will be brought to you, but otherwise you will not interact with anyone, and you are not to leave. Is that understood? He didn't wait for a reply, but turned on his heels and left. Outside, he turned to two maids who were nearby and ordered, "Keep this door locked and don't let anyone enter without checking with me first. Nobody goes in or out unless I've authorized it." Their maids, Kate and Ellie, blanched at his angry tone and nodded, not daring to respond. After he slammed the door shut, Amelia heard the click of the lock and she jumped to her feet. Everything was happening too quickly and she couldn't process it fast enough. Cautiously, she walked up to the door and tried the handle, but it didn't budge. The door was locked. "No, Dad, please don't do this," she yelled. "Please let me out." She banged on the door frantically. "He's going to let me rot in this room," she thought, filled with panic. She kept shouting and pounding on the door, but her efforts were futile. After a while, she realized that her father had left, and she collapsed back onto the sofa in despair. Amelia's mother, Sydney, was heartbroken at her daughter's distress, but she didn't dare help her. Part of her felt the punishment was deserved, given the scandal her daughter had brought down on the family. "Amelia, how could you have done such a thing?" she asked from the other side at the locked door. "Your father is livid. The best thing you can do right now is to stay in that room until all of this blows over." "Mum, you don't understand. Those photos aren't real," Amelia lied. "Someone planted them deliberately to harm me." Cindy shook her head, feeling disappointed. She had hired someone to verify the authenticity of the photos, so she knew that they were definitely real. "Amelia, I know you're lying, and I'm really disappointed in you," she replied, shaking her head. "Believe me, I'd like to think those disgusting images are fake, but I know they're not. Since you can't be honest with me, there is nothing I can do to help you." Listening to her mother's words, Amelia's heart dropped. "She isn't buying my story, so there goes my last hope," she thought, desolate, as she heard her mother's footsteps retreat. "I was young and stupid when I did those things, and I never thought in a million years that they would come back to haunt me like this." Regret and sorrow threatened to overwhelm her. "Now I ruined my family's reputation and both my parents despise me." With that thought, she started to cry. She didn't dare to turn on her phone because as soon as she opened any of her social media accounts, she would see a story about the photos and the thousands of derogatory, insulting comments that went along with it. Before she had even arrived at her parents' place, people were harassing her in the streets, and she had even worried that someone would attack her. "I can't believe it's come to this," she thought, feeling desperately sorry for herself. "I was the world's darling, and now everyone hates me, and all because of Dario. I loathe that man." Her face contorted with rage as she carried on her train of thought. "I used to love him so much, but now I'll find a way to make him pay. It wasn't enough for him to reject me. No, he had to destroy me. How could he have been so cruel?" In her mind, her efforts to discredit Jade didn't warrant this level of punishment. "That woman is nothing. I hate her almost as much as Dario," she muttered. Overcome by her anger, she let out a violent scream. "Dario, this is all because of you. Why did you treat me like this?" The maids outside the door heard Amelia's outburst and shook their heads. "Wow, she's losing it," Kate said. "Well, she's a celebrity now, so I guess she's acting like one," Allie mocked. "I still can't believe that she was stupid enough to get caught in such a compromising situation. Did you know that Mr. Stevens had a heart attack when he saw those pictures?" Kate nodded and said, "Yes, they rushed him to the hospital. The good thing was that it didn't kill him. Mrs. Stevens is pretty upset too. I hear her crying constantly. What a horrible situation that stupid girl has caused." The two women were talking so animatedly that they didn't hear the approaching steps. Their discussion ended abruptly when a female voice said coldly, "I didn't realize we were paying you to spread inappropriate gossip about our family. One more word, and you're both fired." Their heads whipped around, and they saw that the elder, Mrs. Stevens, Olivia, had arrived. She was Amelia's grandmother and the matriarch of the family. Once a friendly, outgoing person, she had changed after the death of her husband 2 years earlier. These days, she rarely spoke, and when she did, it was to criticize something or someone. She would often stay in her room for days, not speaking to anyone and even refusing to eat. Given her reclusive nature, the maids were surprised to see her walking about the house. "We're really sorry, Mrs. Stevens," Kate said. "It won't happen again." "What are you two doing here, standing around when you should be working?" Olivia asked sharply. "Mr. Stevens ordered us to stand guard in front of Amelia's room," Allie explained, her voice shaking slightly. Amelia's grandmother scared her.
"Well, then, go ahead and unlock the door for me," Olivia ordered. "I want to speak to Amelia."
"We're very sorry, Mrs. Stevens, but we were ordered not to let anyone in without Mr. Stevens' explicit permission," Kate replied, feeling very uncomfortable. This response infuriated Olivia, who wasn't used to having her orders disobeyed. Waving her stick at the maids, she yelled,
"You will open this door at once, or I will see that you're gone from this house within the hour."
Fearing for their jobs, Kate complied and unlocked the door, and then she and Allie fled.